In today's society, women are trying to juggle everything between careers and family and all things in between. We're talking with someone who had a skyrocketing career on top of holding down a wonderful family. We'll tell you how she does it despite hurdles that come up in her way coming up.
Welcome to The Right to Inspire. Journalist and host Sarah Strackhouse has worked at Fox News, the CW, CBS, NBC, and Time Warner cable stations across the country for more than 10 years and is now focused on telling inspiring stories of those dedicated to making change. She's driving the message home that ultimately you have the right, the freedom, and the power to be the change you want to see in the world. You have the right to inspire.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of The Right to Inspire, because you have the right, the freedom, and the power to be the change you want to see in the world. And that's what we're trying to do, is bring on people who exemplify this in the best possible way, which is why I'm excited to introduce you to today's guest. Her name is Valerie Sokolosky. She is the president of Valerie Company. Thank you so much for joining us, Valerie.
You're welcome, and you said my name right. That's a great start.
I know. You know, I'll tell you what, it's so funny. Everyone has a little quirk to their name, like Strackhouse, people think Stackhouse.
Right.
But so I wanted to make sure I got you right. Thank you again for coming on. It's an honor to have you.
It's an honor to be here with you.
Well, and if you don't know Valerie, she has an amazing, extensive resume. First off, she has her own show, Doing It Right, which was, I believe, one of Apple's top business podcasts. So that's huge. But on top of that, I really wanted to have you on because in today's day and age, I feel like it's very hard to find that world of balance, right? But what you do really nicely is you had a skyrocketing career, which I'm going to go through momentarily. But then you also have a wonderful family, been married for 40 plus years, children, everything. Grandchildren, which is incredible. So I want to go through everything. But first, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of your accolades because you're so humble and I know you won't talk about them. So graduated from OSU, MIT, Cox School of Business, all of those, great educational purposes in there. On top of that, you were at Channel 8 as a reporter and host. I know you were a radio host as well, and then on a number of leadership boards and other accolades, and have written 8 books now, I want to say.
That's
some of the bestsellers.
That's harder than having babies.
I can only imagine. Between the writing, having to, start to finish, and then being able to, all the editing, it must have been, you've had an amazing career and are still doing amazing things. So I want to ask you, and that now that we've talked about everything, I want to kind of go back and ask you a little bit about what got you started. What was your first career move and how has that pivoted as time's gone on?
Well, the first career move was broadcasting, and it was because, Sarah, it was just such a blessing. At age 16, someone said to me, have you thought about getting into radio and having a teenage radio show? And where that came from, I have no idea. Well, I have an idea. But I said, well, that would be fun. Where do I start? And the reason she said that is because I always liked to be in the high school plays, and I'm not shy. So I thought, well, I'd better start at the lowest rated radio station so I don't feel intimidated and they'll listen to me. So this was Oklahoma City. I'll never forget Jack Beasley, country station. And this person advised me to put together some kind of a proposal. And I said, well, what do I put on it? And well, she said, what you want to do and so forth. So I took a lot of time to type that. I went over and met with Jack Beasley, big country guy, and I'm trying to look sophisticated in an all-black dress. And he looked at that piece of paper and he just turned it over. He said, honey, have you ever been in a radio station? I said, no, sir. He said, well, do you know what a disc jockey does? How they do it? No, sir. He said, well, I'll tell you what, it's summertime. Why don't you just hang around here anytime you want to come over? I was there every day. I borrowed the car and I was there every day, fell in love with broadcasting. And by the end of the season, there was a show that was syndicated called The Tommy Sands Show. And across the country, they needed a teenage host. And so they gave me that show. And that was it. I got hooked.
And your broadcasting career, I mean, shot off, and around the country people were listening to you. I mean, that's incredible. So then when did you move to Channel 8?
Oh, my goodness. So fast forward from age 16.
Yeah.
I was on Channel 8 because they would have me on regularly as the expert of image and etiquette. Because by that time I'd written 8 books on, how you show up, professionalism in the workplace, which I'm still talking about.
Yep.
It's image and it's etiquette. It's as simple as that. And now they call it presence.
Okay.
And so when they needed someone on, well, what fork do you use? They wanted to do something on that or anything that had to do with those 2 subjects. They'd call.
I love that.
That was fun.
Oh, I'm sure. Well, and I think a lot of people correlate etiquette to money. A lot of times presence to money. I think people sometimes say, oh, well, learning how to not put your elbows on the table or, this or that. They say, oh, well, they must have money. They must come from money to have this kind of knowledge. Can you talk a little bit about your background and, how you eventually did start your company? But I know that everyone has hurdles in their life, and you have overcome some incredible things.
Well, to answer your first question, no, everyone needs to know the rules of the table in case they happen to be in front of someone that does know, and then they're not going to be intimidated. And it's just the little things. I keep saying to people, if I'm teaching these subjects in companies, which I do, it's just about tweaking.
Yeah.
It's all about knowledge, and then it's about caring enough to practice.
And I think to your point there, it's not necessarily just about etiquette and little things. It's about like you said, when you're in front of that person, when you have that opportunity to have a seat at the table.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. In fact, those are really good words. Doesn't everyone today want to have a seat at the table,
Absolutely.
want to be recognized, want to go further in their career? So the more we can show up with knowledge and confidence that we can handle any situation, especially when it's around a dinner table or a meeting or anywhere you have to the word presence really says it. And presence to me is how you look, how you act, how you walk, how you talk, but who you are on the inside first. That's what it is.
And that's what's going to get you hired too, is having those things that set you apart from another candidate. That's how you're going to advance in the world. And I know that, people might think, again, if you have this kind of persona, then you had to be rich, but you teach those things from such a, from start to finish. And you didn't grow up that way, right?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
I grew up with a grandmother until I was 11. And I had the opportunity, Sarah, to have a charm school when I was in my early 20s. And I taught kids from 5 years old up to 18. And so that was kind of the beginning and led to, well, goodness, if these people, kids and teens need to know this, maybe business people do. So I just started calling companies and saying, may I come in? I was prospecting into companies, and the rest is history, and that's what Valerie Company is.
So tell me a little bit about, moving to Dallas and starting your company. I know that you did a ton of traveling, you and your husband, with his job for a while.
Yes.
And then you eventually set roots here in Dallas. Tell us a little bit about that.
So I married my wonderful husband of many years, and he was with IBM. So he was climbing his ladder of success and did, thank goodness. And I frankly gave everything up. So we moved about every 2 years.
Wow.
I had 3 children in those moves, and we finally landed in Dallas and said to each other, I think we'll just stay here. And so I thought, well, what am I going to do? Someone came to me and said, have you heard of this thing called color analysis? Doing your colors, which is coming back now.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to have their colors not done and know what colors look good on them, summer, winter, spring, fall.
Sure, yeah.
So I said no, and I looked it up. Was the first one in Dallas to get that certified in a company called Beauty for All Season.
Wow.
I called the Dallas Morning News, Iris Krasno, I'll never forget, who was in charge of the fashion writing for the Dallas Morning News. And she said, well, I don't know anything about it. And I said, well, come over and let me do your colors.
Yep.
And for years after this, I run into someone and they'll still say, you were that color lady. That was.
New title. All right.
But she did
Valerie, the color lady.
Right. And what did it was, gratefully, she did a front page story because she was so excited that she knew her colors.
That's exciting.
That was it.
I love that. Well, and you have this growing career. Your husband had this huge career. And on top of that, you still have 3 kids, right? And we talk so much in today's day and age. Everyone wants to have whatever their calling is, whether they want to be a homemaker, or they want to have a business and they want to have a career. No matter what you're doing, it's balance, and everyone has their own struggles, right? So can you tell us a little bit about your idea of balance and how it's worked for your nucleus?
There is no such thing.
Okay.
I'll just start there. You have to make choices. And I was fortunate enough to have this business that I could do out of my home. Well, guess what? Today, there are a lot of businesses that we can do out of our home. And many of my colleagues and friends are younger women who have children. It's making sure that you're prioritizing. And you know what? If you're online doing something and one of the children happens to come by and say, I need something, don't get all, okay, you're a professional, but you're also a mom. It's okay.
Right.
Just being real. The word I will say over and over again, if you're not authentic, people can see it and want to rub it off.
Right.
Don't try fake.
That's a really good analogy. Just taking a little scrubber to someone.
It's true.
Well, so talk a little bit about your education. Is that what you talk to people about when you're mentoring them, coaching them? Because I know you do all of those things, and now you're helping other women learn how to be the best version of themselves, whether that is etiquette and presence, or it is in the business world.
It's the whole shebang. It's everything. The beauty is we're all still learning. I'm still learning. And so if men or women are still curious about, well, I maybe would like to know more about how I should show up. That's really it. That's all it is. How do you want to show up with presence? And that's how you communicate. It is still how you look. I don't care what anyone says. The sloppy says sloppy, and you'll be sloppy. And caring enough to have an image. Who are you? Do you show up one day in sweats and the next day in some very sophisticated something, and the next day, who are you? So a lot is brand. It really is. This whole thing about personal branding, which I also help people with. Who is it that you are, and how do you want to show up? Well, what are you doing to show up that way?
Right.
So again, look, act, walk, talk, and are from the inside out.
I have kind of a funky question, and we didn't talk about this ahead of time, so forgive me if I'm putting you on the spot here. Social media, it's such an interesting way for people to put themselves out there. Have you noticed how social media has affected your business, or do you have instructions for people on what they should be putting on their social media? What are your thoughts as to what social media has done in your space?
Well, it's very much like if you were showing up in the office or at meetings or at a conference or anything else, except it's more constant. So I go back to what I said, stay authentic, but be the best of you. And this whole Zoom thing, Sarah has shown me a lot about how people feel about themselves. When I'm on Zoom calls, as an example, I see people that haven't touched their hair or not much, put a little lipstick on. I'm not saying get all made up like we have to be on camera, but care about how you look, because it has everything to do with how you show up. Even how you show up in
how people treat you.
And how people treat you. So I still say first impressions are always going to be important. And then maintaining that impression. So be the best of who you can be. It's as simple as that. And you said it.
I love that. That's great advice. That's great advice. If people want to find out more about you, about your teaching, about how they can just learn all things Valerie, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
My website, valerieandcompany.com. But my phone number too, pick it up, 214, it's easy, 502-3334.
Oh, that is easy. I love that.
I am getting ready to do, so all of my work has been in companies. So with all the social media and what have you, I am going to start doing courses.
Okay.
And so they can watch for that. just send me an email, put you on the list, and I'll let you know when they'll start.
That's great. And we'll make sure to tag your socials and all of your information and talk a little bit about your podcast too.
Oh, It feeds my soul. Oh my gosh. It just brings everything from age 16 back.
Yep.
I had the opportunity, thank goodness, because of a very special man in my life, Jeff Crilly, who owns all this. And he said, well, gosh, this was 7 years ago, I'm going to open a podcast studio. I said, what's that?
Love it.
And so he said, why don't you have a show? And I said, I'd love it. He said, well, what do you want to call it? I said, I don't know. Let me think about it. So I talked to my daughter about it. And she said, here's what she said. This was so smart. She said, all right, Mom, what do you do? And I started into this spiel, no, what do you do? No, what do you? And finally she said, don't you help people do it right? And I went, bingo. And that's the name of one of my books.
I love how simple it is, but it's amazing. It's so spot on with what you're teaching people. Whatever your right is in your industry, in your life, that's what you're pushing forward. So I love that.
That's right. And don't try to push something forward that you say, oh, I need to be. That's one other tip I want to leave people with. Because I tried to do it early on. And that's open the kimono and I do this and I do this and I do this. No. Who are you? And what do you do that comes so naturally? And this is to you. You do this so naturally. It's a gift.
It's very sweet of
and
you.
It's your gift. And you are now showing your gift. And it's real and it's working for you.
Thank you.
So,
well, I'm honored to be able to have guests like you on who are able to share their stories and help inspire others, because that's really what this is about. It's about making your own change and making your own possibilities in life, because I know that everyone has different hurdles and struggles, and all you can do is your best and do it right.
And don't ever give up, because you will get in the down, I call slipper day, pink slipper days.
Pink slipper day.
And that's okay. Run around in your pink slippers for a day and then get back up.
Yep. We've all been there. Well, I love that. I have one final question for you. And again, I hope it might put you on the spot a little bit. If I knew you better, what would I ask you?
What's most important to you?
Okay. What's most important to you?
Family first. Family first. Relationships. And staying authentic with them. Because if you're only in relationships for what someone can do for you, it shows. So Zig Ziglar said it well. He said, when you give, you get. And I would agree with that 100%.
I would agree with that if you're in the right relationships.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's great advice. Well, thank you again so much for coming on. I really appreciate you.
It's been a joy.
And thank you everyone so much for joining us. We've loved having Valerie on. Don't forget to follow, like, and subscribe The Right to Inspire on all of your socials, and we'll see you next time.